would be my
Get
bet.
the under.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in
Yeah.
game time.
You can't have a powerful line like that bet the under. I'm sorry.
Well, you can if they're
No,
not being
we
fancy.
need
They're
goals.
dumping it in.
We're going to look for goals. All right. Plenty more still to come on the Real Kipper and Bourne show. Our thanks to Jim Nill, general manager of the Dallas Stars. From one to another, we're going to welcome in Bill Guerin, general manager of the Minnesota Wild, as he also gets ready for the Four Nations tournament. We'll get into that and more when we return. Don't go away. All right, here we go. The National Hour on Real Kipper and Bourne. We are live on Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver, Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. This hour of Real Kipper and Bourne brought to you by Bet365. Nick Kiprios, Justin Bourne, Sammy McKee. Couple minutes, we're going to welcome in another general manager. Nice to have Jim Nill with us in our Leaf Edition hour. And now we're going to soon connect with Bill Guerin, who's done a miraculous job with the Minnesota Wild.
I don't know if he's as nice as Jim Nill, but he's certainly funnier.
He's...
I'll tell you that. No disrespect to Jim Nill. I haven't heard his stand-up.
we got a couple chuckles out of Jim,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
It's that
You
time
know
of the
who's
year.
not chuckling? Kevin Adams from the Buffalo Sabres. You
What?
watch that game last night? Catch a piece of
I
it?
did not.
No, good for you. Good for
I did not.
you.
Can I ask you
Why would you?
Can I ask you a question? What is a worse loss? Losing 6-1 to the Montreal Canadiens, the Buffalo Sabres, or the New York Rangers losing 2-0 to the Nashville Predators? Which is a worse loss?
The only reason, so I would say losing the Preds if you're the Rangers because of expectations, but the Sabres were fresh off the owner traveling to Montreal to tell them he believes in them and everything they need is here in the room. And then they went out and said, don't gaslight us. We know it's not.
There's nothing in this
and
room.
they got scored on 19 seconds into the game. They gave up what turned out not to be a goal. They went down 2-0. It was awful. Awful game.
First of all, we can kind
We
of
suck.
lump them. We can lump them together because it is the state of New York.
Well, the Islanders
Right?
aren't doing so hot either.
All right, so let's I'll put them in a melting pot.
Yeah. You could put together a pretty good group between the three teams. But no, it's ugly.
And particularly what I've been able to read, I mean, both fan bases are, it seems like they're going out of their minds. But the one in Buffalo, to me, because of the ongoing struggles, like let's face it, the Rangers were still a contending team prior to the season starting. They won the President's Trophy, but the Buffalo scene has been too ugly for too long.
Yeah.
And they want somebody's head to roll.
Yeah. And so why do you think the owner would go in there and say everything's great? Like everything is clearly not great, just doesn't want to pay for another GM or another.
You got to get back to the Bills. That's why. Just tell them whatever can get you out of the room fast enough.
I mean, honestly, I think that could be why the Sabres were so bad. Like, it's not true. And he's just like, it just feels like lip service when you're literally on fire. And he's like, but you're not on fire. And they're like, no, we're actively on fire. And he's like, nah.
Do you know the last season that the Buffalo Bills made? Buffalo Bills. You're talking about the Bills. Buffalo Sabres made the playoffs?
2011.
12?
Yeah, 2011, 2012. This is a remarkably bad stretch.
The Buffalo Sabres in that time, from 2013 to 2022, have drafted in the top 10 times. 10 top 10 picks, including 2 firsts and 2 seconds.
It's just, it's so hard to rebuild, and you don't have the right people in charge.
Their picks were good since 12,
They're fine.
right? No, but like
Just none of them play there
where they
anymore.
picked in the draft should have gotten them far and away contending by now.
Yes. Even if you don't keep the players and you trade them for assets, you should have a whole bunch of assets. It's
Like it's not even like right now, it's to the point where even if they did fire somebody and brought somebody else new, you'd have to look down that roster and say, if I don't necessarily believe that Owen Power is going to be this can't miss stud for the next 12 years, like I'm giving him over $8 million a year here. Like, how do you dig yourself out of some of these contracts if you don't believe in them?
I just think you have to see it through a little bit with some of these guys and give them a chance to find it.
Yeah, like I get it. I get it. Defense is hard, and I'm not
Yeah.
giving up on Owen Power to be
Right.
a solid blue liner. But if you missed a little bit, those are huge mistakes that you cannot dig yourself out of.
No, and like you can read my article today on sportsnet.ca, which is about the idea of watching like Jacob Trouba go to a different team or Cam Fowler go to a different team. And it's like, that needs to be you. You need to go get guys that you don't love the contract. Maybe you don't think that they're flawed. Okay. They're better than your worst guys. They're NHL pros. They're proven guys. You just need to support your young guys so they can develop. Look at the way that Dallas develops these young guys within a successful team and how much better they are as a result. I look at, Protas and McMichael on Washington this year. All of a sudden, they're surrounded by who'd they get this year? Chychrun and Roy and Mangiapane and Dubois. Like, you put NHL players around these guys, suddenly it makes them better. That has to be Buffalo. They need to go get those players. Bid in UFA.
Yeah.
Don't accept losing for a better pick anymore.
Yeah, because you've had
You had the picks.
you've had a million picks.
And also probably a GM with experience like Don Waddell or, Rutherford in Vancouver. Those guys went in and gave those organizations instant credibility.
It's also really hard to kind of look at certain players when you have them and then look at them objectively outside of maybe a lack of chemistry with your team. And Chychrun's the prime example.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought he was just no good in Ottawa. At the end of the day, he's just no good, didn't fit. Now it's like you're questioning how good is he, and then he goes to Washington and looks like a stud. All right, let's welcome him in, Billy Guerin, as we – phone issues. We'll be right back.
We were supposed to have him on Zoom, but
Oh.
I don't know. Is he not? Maybe not. Anyways.
We'll
Okay.
see. We'll
He's
see.
calling.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. But
Okay.
Chychrun looks like a complete different player than whatever we saw in
But
Ottawa.
this is when you're supported by other good players. That gives you the chance to reach your own potential, and that's when you have young guys find it all of a sudden on good teams,
And another guy who I think is still underrated for me is John Carlson in
Yeah.
Washington. And Chychrun's come in and done a wonderful job supporting him.
We're going to talk about how good this Faber is. Part of it is Brodin is very good, his partner. Anyway.
All right, let's pick up this conversation a little bit on development as we welcome in General Manager of the Minnesota Wild, Billy Guerin. Billy, how's it going, buddy?
It's going great, guys. How are you doing?
We're good. We're good. We're just talking about hit and miss and the struggles of teams that we don't expect, and then others that we thought were going to suck and they don't.
No.
And Billy, I'm the first one to wave the white flag, man. I thought your team was going to stink this year, and they don't. And they don't.
Oh, well, you know what? I appreciate your honesty.
Do you?
I love it. Yeah, I do. I actually do. You got the stones to say it, and you know what? Look, it's hard to look at a team with $15 million in dead cap space and say, oh yeah, there's my
Yes.
team. So I get it, but I give our players and coaches a lot of credit. That's never mentioned. It's they had a great training camp. They're all on the same page. The players are hungry to win. They're hungry to play the right way, and it's been a good first 30 games. That's how many we played.
Leafs facing center crisis amid injuries, eyeing trade market for solutions. As the Toronto Maple Leafs battle through a growing injury list and a suspension, their lack of depth at the center position has become a glaring issue. According to Sportsnet's Elliotte Friedman in his latest 32 Thoughts article, the Leafs are among the teams exploring trade options to bolster their lineup. This effort is coming amid increasing competition from teams like the Chicago Blackhawks and Nashville Predators, who have also set their sights on improving their center depth. Friedman didn't mince words about the Leafs' predicament. The teams currently focusing on centers, including Chicago and Nashville, must consider when others will enter the market. Toronto will undoubtedly be one of those teams, he wrote. While the Blackhawks and Predators may have an edge in terms of cap space and assets, the Leafs remain a team to watch as the season progresses. The Leafs situation is urgent, with up to 7 forwards currently unavailable due to injury or suspension. Ryan Reeves is serving a 5-game suspension, while key players like Austin Matthews, upper body, Matthew Knies, upper body, Kaje Jarnkrok, groin/sports hernia, David Kampf, lower body, Max Domi, lower body, and Max Pacioretty, lower body, are all sidelined. The team has even considered temporarily shifting Mitch Marner to the center position, highlighting the severity of their depth issues. This isn't just a short-term concern for the Leafs. Depth at center has been a persistent challenge for the team, and while stopgap solutions like Marner could help in the interim, the front office appears keen to explore longer-term fixes. For fans of the blue and white, this has been a recurring theme. The Leafs' center depth often becomes a problem at the worst possible times. James Myrtle of The Athletic recently added more fuel to the speculation, naming several potential trade targets who could help the Leafs address their issues. Among them is Ryan O'Reilly, a familiar name for Toronto fans. O'Reilly, who signed a 4-year, $18 million deal with Nashville in 2023, might be a trade candidate if the Predators' underwhelming start to the season, 6-11-3, 31st in the league, prompts a rebuild. However, his steep price tag and history with the Leafs, including rejecting a free agency offer less than 2 years ago, make this a complex and potentially unlikely move. Other names mentioned by Myrtle include former Leaf Nazem Kadri, currently with Calgary, as well as players like Michael Granlund, Nick Jugstad, Brock Nelson, Yanni Gourde, Trent Frederick, Radek Faksa, and Sean Kuraly. While some of these options seem more plausible than others, it's clear that general manager Brad Treliving will need to get creative to find the right piece without mortgaging the team's future. Cap space remains one of the biggest obstacles for the Leafs. Unlike teams like Chicago and Nashville, which have more flexibility and assets, Toronto is walking a financial tightrope. As Friedman noted, competition will intensify as cap-constrained teams strive to create room. For the Leafs, that could mean waiting for the market to develop further, a risky move given their current needs. The situation also highlights the Leafs' ongoing struggle to build a roster that can withstand the grueling nature of an NHL season. Injuries are an inevitability in hockey, but Toronto's current predicament underscores the importance of depth, a quality the team has struggled to consistently maintain. Looking back on recent years, the Leafs have often leaned heavily on their star players, particularly Matthews, Marner, and William Nylander. While these players have delivered in spades, the lack of reliable depth options has left the team vulnerable in critical moments. The current crisis at center is merely the latest example of this recurring issue. Some fans have called for more aggressive moves from Treliving, arguing that now is the time to strike while the team's core is in its prime. Others, however, are more cautious, pointing to the dangers of overpaying for short-term fixes. Striking the right balance will be key, especially as the Leafs aim to keep their championship window open. Despite the challenges, there's no denying that Toronto has the talent to be a contender, provided they can patch up their lineup. The ongoing rumors and speculation surrounding potential trades show that the Leafs are at least exploring every avenue to strengthen their roster. For fans of the blue and white, this moment feels like a pivotal point in the season. With a lineup ravaged by injuries and a tough schedule ahead, the Leafs must act decisively to avoid falling behind in the standings. The addition of a dependable center could be the difference between weathering the storm or watching another season slip away. Whether it's O'Reilly, Kadri, or another surprise name, one thing is certain: the Leafs are under pressure to deliver. And for a fan base as passionate and loyal as Toronto's, there's no room for excuses. The time to act is now, and Leafs Nation is watching closely. As the trade deadline approaches, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Treliving pull off a move that solidifies the Leafs' status as a contender, or will the search for center depth become yet another chapter in the team's long history of what-ifs? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, it's never boring in Leafs land. As the Maple Leafs navigate this critical juncture, their fan base remains as vocal as ever. Toronto is a city that breathes hockey, and the pressure on Brad Treliving to make the right moves is immense. Every decision he makes, or doesn't make, will be scrutinized, from talk radio to social media, where Leafs Nation is already debating the merits of the various names being floated as potential trade targets. Among the louder debates is whether the team should prioritize a high-profile acquisition like Ryan O'Reilly or Nazem Kadri, or focus on a lower-cost, reliable center who can fill a supporting role without costing too many future assets. While O'Reilly's leadership and playoff experience make him an attractive option, his contract and recent history with the Leafs add layers of complexity to any potential reunion. Similarly, Kadri's gritty, two-way playstyle remains a fan favorite, but his cap hit and availability might render him an unrealistic target. Another factor complicating the Leafs situation is their tight salary cap. While Chicago and Nashville can make moves with relative ease due to their financial flexibility, Toronto must navigate a labyrinth of constraints to make any trade work. This likely means including salary retention or moving existing contracts to make room, which could drive up the cost of any potential deal. The question then becomes, how much are the Leafs willing to sacrifice to address their immediate needs? One potential trade partner generating buzz is the Seattle Kraken. Yanni Gourde, a dependable two-way center, has been mentioned as a possible target. Gourde's versatility and championship pedigree from his time with Tampa Bay make him an appealing option. Seattle, however, is in playoff contention and may not be inclined to part with a key piece unless the Leafs can provide a substantial return. Another intriguing name is Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. Nelson is a consistent scorer and reliable faceoff man, qualities that would undoubtedly bolster Toronto's center depth. However, the Islanders are notoriously cautious when it comes to trades, and prying Nelson away would likely require a significant package, including picks or prospects that the Leafs may be hesitant to part with. For all the trade talk, some analysts believe the solution might come from within. Sheldon Keefe has shown a willingness to experiment with his lineup, and players like Pontus Holmberg or Fraser Minten could be given an opportunity to step up. While relying on less experienced players carries risks, it might be the Leafs' only option if the trade market proves too costly or slow to develop. Adding to the Leafs' urgency is the timing. The Atlantic Division remains one of the toughest in the league, with teams like Boston, Florida, and Tampa Bay continuing to dominate. Any prolonged slump could see Toronto slip further down the standings, putting their playoff hopes in jeopardy. For a team with Stanley Cup aspirations, failing to address their weaknesses could have catastrophic consequences. Brad Treliving's history as a general manager suggests he's not afraid to make bold moves. His time with the Calgary Flames was marked by blockbuster trades, including the acquisition of Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar in the Matthew Tkachuk deal. Leafs fans hope he brings that same decisiveness to Toronto, especially as the trade deadline looms. Beyond the immediate need for a center, this situation underscores a broader issue with the Leafs roster construction. Depth has been a perennial concern, and while Toronto boasts some of the league's top-end talent, their reliance on a handful of stars has left them vulnerable in moments like this. Moving forward, addressing this imbalance must be a priority for the front office if the team is to achieve sustained success. As the Leafs head into a critical stretch of the season, the next few weeks could define their trajectory.